Alright, let's see if this works. So, I doubt anyone has actually watched my channel before, but if you have, you might have noticed I had these up previously, but at the time, I didn't have any audio, long story why. So what these are basically little game demos from a class, a video game dev class, that I had, and I figured each of these is made in about a week, and I wanted to put them up online as kind of a portfolio thing. This was a very simple class. All the programming was done in a kind of a language vaguely Java-like called Slag. It's based around this environment called Plasma Core that is code anywhere, compile compile locally system. And what that means is basically you have the same source code for any kind of computer as long as your compile environment is set up right. And all you have to do to make a Mac or an Android or any other kind of system is compile it specifically to that system. I am working on a Mac right now, but I can make Windows devs and various other things. And it's a very simple language. I like it a lot. I hope it gets more support. It was developed by the teacher of the class, Abe Crowley, and he has moved on to do other things, including a little company that he is making games for on the iPhone and such, and Android systems. And I will put more information about that in the description. So this here is First Strike. It was basically a first program, and the objective of this was to make a little game that would use an MVC architecture. This stands for Model View Control, and the basic point is that you have your model system, the game environment, where everything is moving and positioned and such. View, which draws everything and represents how everything looks to the person playing the game, and the control system, which is basically about how it receives the controls from the user, and how it interprets them and sends them into influences the model. So this little thing had to be made in about a week. We would receive our first assignment with a basic description of, oh, we have to use these kind of gameplay elements, we have to use this kind of system. And then next week we'd start presenting them. So we didn't have a lot of time to do these. I went with a very simple walk-around type shooter game, and for graphics you're allowed to grab anything, because otherwise that'd take forever to do something like this. And so I made a little StarCraft thing. You can see I have health, I have these. I love the little AI on these guys. This program for me ended up being an experiment in handling a system that would draw graphics and sprites and animate things, as you can see here. And the other big thing on it was making an intelligent system for these guys, because these guys go into kind of 3 different modes. They have a long-term run towards you mode, where they know where you are, but then they kind of lose you after a minute. And they have a kind of wander mode. And when they get really close, they just run right at you. And so when they're far away, they switch between a kind of approach mode and a kind of wander mode. And when they're close, they just chase you. And the idea is they kind of drift towards you as you play. But I really am very amused by just the way they walk around and the way they move. And it was a lot of fun to do that. I only made 3 little levels, and this one ended up being the hardest one, because I made one that was like vertical, one that was horizontal, and one that was wide. This one actually ended up being the hardest of the 3. So you basically just continue through it until you die, and there's no sounds or anything, because that took way too long. And at the time that we were doing this, most of the sound code was very bad. Anyway, that is the sample of First Strike, and it was actually one of the very first games I made. And I hope it was amusing to you. If you have any questions on how I set up anything, feel free to leave them in the comments. Most important thing with this step was just getting the bare bones idea of how to set up a game system, how to do a level, and various things like that. And that's really important because a lot of people have like these high in the sky ideas for when they want to make a game. And really, the most valuable thing that you can do when you want to make a game is to make lots of little things, get an idea of what kind of programming style suits you, even understanding the basics of how to do things like key pointing with these sprites. And what a key point is if you watch these guys here as they run around, you can kind of try and say that the center of the creature is where the graphics center should be drawn, but that's not actually going to be true. If you look when they run horizontally and stuff, their physical size of the graphic stretches a lot. And so what you end up having to doing if you want to conserve space is the concept of a key point, and that's basically a common point where that you want to stay consistent no matter what the size and width of the image is. So it might be at the feet of your little marine here. He was the easiest to position because his width and height and stuff relative to each frame doesn't change much. But as the direction changes on these zerglings, it gets really useful to be able to say, this is the absolute point that I want all of these things to match up when I'm drawing based on the position. And you can have some little offset to that, but that's the basic, one of the most basic things I figured out to do when doing this. Everything else was pretty simple, just doing like a camera architecture was the only other funky thing, and that's pretty easy if you just know some basic vector math. You can figure out how to position your camera based on the character. And collision and stuff is really simple. It's basically absolute bounding boxes, and if you don't know what that is, I suggest you look it up. I use that for everything that I do. Even more complex collisions are based on an absolute bounding box first, and then if there's a collision there, I might do some other collision code type stuff. Anyway, that'll be it for this video. I hope you were entertained or learned something. That is it.